Okay, hi guys. So this is the last lecture on this topic, the political economy of development, and this is your one of the two makeup lectures. I'll have to give for your class. So basically, we will continue with the rentier state argument, and we're gonna cover herb chapters, and I'm I'm going to touch upon different threads, in the literature, what accounts for poor records of social and economic development in the region, and we're going to see if there is any kind of link between development and authoritarianism based on the readings already we covered. Um, so this is like another mechanisms like we talked about, how like unpacking the state with a special like application to the Saudi case last lecture, and here we're going to talk about different or another mechanisms that actually link oil or like rent to a particular outcome, like poor incoherent policy making or incoherent development policies. And here we're going to talk like the rent and labor market or economic diversification with a specific application to Kuwait and Emirates. So basically here the central argument, it's not like it's kind of the disputed mechanism that actually would answer how oil affects certain outcome. Here, Herb provides different mechanism by focusing on political participation and how the existence or the absence of this political participation would affect, labor market and diversification of economic sectors in the Gulf states. So like the central point, how Kuwait actually had like a strong, relatively kind of strong national assembly or parliament, that they don't have like capitals, they don't dominate the parliament. So the like the citizens kind of they have like kind of say in like economic policy or economic choices, while in Emirate and basically Dubai, how Dubai actually managed to lead kind of economic diversification and like some literature actually calls it like post-rentier state because of the absolutist rule of the ruling families. So like in Kuwait, actually the situation is like the state is the main employer. So the state actually offers generous welfare system to the citizens, to its citizens. So they have kind of vested interest in maintaining the status quo. So it gives like the public distributes public sector jobs, and even in the private sector, the state actually supports or offers allowances or kind of paid checks subsidized by the state for those who work in the private sector. So the distribution of like the jobs in Kuwait is highly centralized. So there is kind of state agency is responsible for filtering application and distributing these jobs and announcing those who manage to get the job. And usually all applicants and well educated and those who applied for jobs, they got the job. So according to the Herb, except for there is kind of discrimination against with varying degree against women. So women only with the that applied for public sector job, with university degree, with like high with university degree, they usually get the job, and men with secondary school degree usually get the job. But they actually they don't have something to do within the administrative apparatuses, because and this created what's called al-batala al-muqanna'a, mass unemployment. But again, it's kind of it's a contract between the state and its citizens, just to distribute the rents, to give them kind of share in the rents it already the state actually has control over. Um, so like they have to he offer like he offered kind of policy recommendations how actually this high cost and unproductive economic structure could be transformed. So the policy that would encourage the citizens to move into private sectors would be like beneficial in this case, because they have interest in maintaining this, because they got like public sector job, and then they don't care about non-oil or diversifying the economy or undertaking kind of structural transformation of the economy in Kuwait. So they didn't even like, or they don't even they don't even have the incentive to get like much more competitive skills that are needed to get appointed or to get admitted to the public to the private sector. So they don't care about investing um, in acquiring new skills or getting more competitive, because already the state already offers them the job they aim to. And then like the one of the main problem in the Gulf state is like the cheap labor. So they got like like influx of labor migration, that they actually composed one class that they lacked any kind of citizenship, expatriates class that in some cases the actually the numbers actually exceeded the citizen the numbers of as a percentage exceeded the percentage of the citizens, as it's as it is the case in the Emirates. But in Kuwait it was like kind of divorce between the private sector and the citizens, and they don't care much about getting into the private sector or improving or acquiring the skills needed to get into the private sector. Uh, I'll go like into like Dubai model and the Emirate the case of Emirate as well, and then how this affected what's called class compromise in the Gulf state, and how this would have like long run or affected the development strategy or the development policies in these countries. Um, so in Dubai, basically, it was like the state. They had like it's kind of oil. It's still like oil-rich country, but they don't pay like the impose kind of taxes on the private sector fund. So they allow the private sector to fund the wage bill, instead of like subsidizing the salaries for those who work in the private sector. Um, so there is no need to pay for like public sector salaries from, and even like for public sector they don't pay from they pay from like non-oil income or non-oil revenues, although like they have like the resources and the oil resources needed to pay for this, but they don't depend on this to pay or to offer as a sort of distribution of the rents to its citizens. Um, and the private sector as well refrains from hiring citizens because they have the option, to get like cheap laborers migrated, or cheap laborers from cheap countries, especially Asian countries. Um, so the Emirates especially, and Qatar as well, they invested, or they put too much money into education in order to improve the skills, and perhaps to encourage people to get into the private sector, but it doesn't pay off, because this kind of a structure, the economic structure actually does not reward those, this sort of educational attainment or educational achievement. It's still like, citizens that they come from well-off, background. They manage to get degrees from Western universities, but it doesn't like solve, the entire problem. It doesn't offer solution to the structural problem in the economy. So still, like, people believe in public sector as like the safest domain, and it requires kind of low standards, so they don't need to spend much time or to spend, like, money in getting, new skills, or to get, like, more training to get into the private sector. So in UAE, it was like, there is no kind of direct or citizens, they do not directly receive their share of the oil wealth through this public sector employment. And salaries and wages in private sectors are very low because of this kind of government policies that encourage the importing, cheap labor, and this actually pushed down the free market cost of labor, and especially for less skilled workforce. And citizens actually they make up like only a small part of the labor market. It's like, skewed to expatriates. Here, like, so here, like, the public and mixed sectors. So you have, like, here, like, a small part of the labor market actually is occupied by citizens. This is like on your left hand side, the cell, the down here, and then with the dark gray, and then the light gray here, expatriates in the public and mixed sectors. They actually they account for the actually the size is bigger than the citizens, and it's like it's really huge, like the percentage, or the if you compare citizens and expatriates in the private sector, actually it's a huge part occupied by expatriates. So like this kind of extremely like low cost of labor, it actually it fed by, this kind of influx of labor, and there is no kind of restriction on labor migration. So like especially from as I mentioned, like unskilled labor from poor countries. So this kind of like division or distorted labor market between like private sector and public sector, and between citizens and expatriates, actually this actually denied or prevented what's called class compromise. So according to, I mentioned this last lecture, but here it's kind of the whole point is to allow the private sector to thrive, is to allow them to accumulate profits, and then these profits, like you accumulate, or you make, some profits, today, and then you invest, the money tomorrow into, different projects, or you make different investment, and these investments would generate like more job opportunities and employment for in the future. And then like labor would rely on, the capital, or the capitalist for jobs, and then the tax revenues would be allowed for the state to use in order to provide or to finance public service. But here, in the case of the Emirates, So you have here like the employment that should have been guaranteed by the investment, like future investment, by using the capital or the surpluses accumulated by capitalists. They actually went not to citizens but to migrant to like the expatriates. So actually the private sector, or they have their own business, and they do care, or they have invested interest in importing cheap labor and forcing down the cost, the labor cost. And then they have like this compromise, the class compromise. It's between like the ruling family and the expatriates, not the citizens. Like so they have like let the ruling family like earn billions in exchange for allowing them or maintaining some sort, giving them space in the private sector, without like allowing private sector to grow or to thrive, or to diversify. um, but in that was like in the case of Dubai, and in the case of Kuwait, actually it was a total like disconnection between private sector and citizens, because citizens refrain from getting into private sector because it needs more skills, and they actually have the state offers them generous welfare and generous distribution of public jobs. And even in the private sector, the state would subsidize would offer them allowances. Uh, so the point here, there is kind of underlying historical like historical argument as well. It's pretty much related to the history of the state building and the state formation in both countries. So like Dubai was kind of different because if you remember, we mentioned something about the threat, came from Iraq, and this Al Sabah, like had an interest in creating, this representative body in order to vocalize or to challenge or to get some support to mitigate, any threat that came from Iraq. Um, like in Emirates, actually, they didn't face this sort of external threat. They tried to develop, the state, or to reshape, the state institutions along the Kuwaiti experience, or the National Assembly, to have like a representative body as the National Assembly in Kuwait. But it was like Dubai actually like grow kind of strong emirate even before 1970s. So Al Maktoum actually they managed in since the 19th century, they managed to attract some merchants to actually to channel their operations um, into Dubai. So what happened? It was like like the government in Iran imposed some sort of heavy customs duties. So that's why especially on the port cities on the northern coast of the Gulf. So that's why they attracted the disgruntled merchants in order to have or to establish their business in Dubai. So by 1950, even before getting the official independence from Britain, so they had the they managed to develop Dubai, or to transform Dubai into like an important emirate. Like they had like container port, and it rank globally. And the passenger and the cargo airports as well. They are one of the busiest ports in the world. Um, so And like they tried, like in Dubai as well, the ruling family tried to assert kind of autonomous position, and that gave like kind of a space, to allocate resources, or to break, with this to move, towards non-oil sectors, especially real estate sector. So what happened in 1971? It was like, they had like a temporary constitution. It had like it should have expired in 1976, and it was like competition or a struggle between Abu Dhabi and Dubai over, like, the polity structure. So Abu Dhabi actually and bin Zayed needed, a strong federation that like would strengthen the power of the federal institution, and like this way, like, Abu Dhabi and Dubai would lose like any kind of veto power that they had in the council of rulers. Uh, so actually they had like all the emirates, they had to they had actually to transfer like 75% of their income and wealth to the federal government. This would actually strengthen or the position of the president, and it would give, like, Zayed much more power, as from the emirate level to the federal level. This would strengthen, the position of the president. And then, like, the actually the aim to strengthen as well the federal national council, in order, inspired by the experience of the Kuwaiti experience, of the experience of the National Assembly in Kuwait, in order to give, like, to offer them, like, a veto, to cast, like, a vote of no confidence, but like for the ministers, but not for not to cast, a vote to dismiss, the prime minister, and to elect, some of the members of the Federal National Council. But actually, because of the like the opposition or the challenge came from Al Maktoum, it aborted, this after kind of different struggles and different rounds between, like, both emirates. It was like kind of a dreadlock, or a dreadlock and deadlock between both of them. And then after like in 1990s, actually they tried to form, they marginalized the issue, after 1976, and then it did surface again, in order to have like a permanent constitution, and they established like a committee in order to discuss what kind of permanent constitution, or to write, a new permanent constitution. And the committee had like one member of Al Maktoum, and of course they affected, the course of the events, because the in 1996 actually they put an end to the whole issue by accelerating the process, by removing, this word of muaqqat, or temporary, and and put instead, like, removing this word without changing the content, or leaving the text, as it is. So they put an end, to this, and like to any kind of demands of like a strong national federal national council. So they don't have, like, a powerful like political body that would exert, kind of oversight on the ruling family, or would have any kind of say in the decision making process. So this kind of lack of political participation, or absolutism, or the absolutist role of the ruling family, enabled them to proceed with the economic decisions, irrespective of, or regardless of the anger of the citizens, because there is kind of a demographic imbalance here. Like, you have like the growing number of expatriates, since the mid 90s, and actually they exceeded, the number of the citizens, and this affected, the it did like, increased some worries and fears of the citizens, not necessarily because of they are like xenophobic or they had like, this antagonism, towards outsiders, but it had economic dimension, or they would, fear of national disposition because of the takeover of the expatriates. So it was like, totally distorted, labor market, and this class politics actually, as I mentioned, prevented, any sort of class compromise, that marked the modern capitalist economy. And there is no incentive, especially in Kuwait, to get employed in private sector and to diversify the economy, because they have like interest in maintaining, or the role of the state in distributing or sharing, the wealth with its citizens through the public sector employment. Um, so here, like, even like, the like Emirate as well, like attracted like, built like university campuses, in order to improve, the quality of education, and Qatar as well, and they try to invest, in education, but still like the belief or the perception of the citizens, still they do believe in the role of the public sector. And perhaps like it's different in Emirate, because they have like different issue regarding the expatriates. uh, so like here, it's not like oil per se that affects, the structure of the labor market, or uh, allowed for diversification or economic diversification or not. It's in conjuncture with another variable that's here, like political participation. So here, because like Kuwait had like a strong national assembly, so it was like very difficult. It would like, veto, or it would like cast, a vote of no confidence, and they would, veto some of the policies. And they actually established, this principle that um, the government authority has to be rested, on the support of the Majlis, or the majority of the National Assembly. So the actually, although like, perhaps the ruling family, they didn't fully agree, on this, but it's by practice and this kind of like the historical evolution of this institution established, these norms and rules. So it has like, kind of sort of political participation, but that prevented, this any kind of shift to non-oil economic structure or economic diversification. Uh, but in Emirates, they had like, some sort of political and economic consequences of the increasing role of the expatriates in the economies, but they don't have like, the institutional or organizational structure that would transform this, because like it's all about, the decision of the ruling family. So the keep seeking, this kind of growth at the expense of the concerns of or these kind of concerns over demographic imbalance between citizens and expatriates. So it's here like, the political participation. It's not like, oil or rents per se. Um, so the underlying logic here, it's still like, historical argument as well, or historical institutionalist logic as well, um, that enabled, the one country in order to diversify its economy, or to move, to the position of the post-rentier state. and the other one, the citizens and the very existence of the National Assembly actually precluded, or this level of political participation prevented, the making any shift to economic diversification. Um, so here it's again the literature on resource curse and authoritarianism that link actually rentier state and resource curse, that both theories or both like streams, they link authoritarianism to the or with the existence of the rent or the oil. Uh, so there's no kind of coherent theory. It was like kind of several group of hypotheses that make these kind of assumptions about the negative effect of the oil on development or on potential of democratization. But there is kind of a difference between both theories, especially with regard to their effect on development. Resource curse, actually, the main assumption or the hypothesis, the expected, proponents expect a negative outcome, especially on the distribution and high level of inequality. And the other, like rentier state, actually the expect, or one of the hypotheses predict, this kind of cooptation, or the generous distribution or share of wealth between the state and citizens to co-opt them into acquiescence. And this would lower or decrease the level of inequality and enable the state to provide, welfare system or public good, public goods provision. Um, while not like they don't expect this economic diversification. And here what we have learned by from the readings, it was like the history and context, they do matter. So here in this case, you need to bring in different variables, especially like the political participation, because of the lack of the political participation actually enabled economic diversification at the expense, of or regardless of the worries over demographic imbalance or national disposition. Uh, so it's much more like complex. And last lecture we talked about how actually oil enabled the state in the very early beginning, when the state, like when the Saudi state actually tried to build the modern state. So the oil actually enabled or gave ruling families, um, offered them like wide institutional options to co-opt or to distribute or to share the rents with with some, like with some circles in society, in addition to the penetration or the reach out through welfare system. So this kind of diversified the institutional options, created this sense of entitlement among the citizens, and these kind of institutional structure or organizational structure choices congealed over time, and it was very difficult to retreat or to turn on the commitment. And this created what's called segmented clientelism, by creating parallel structures of different, fiefdoms and different, even like below the level of the technocrats, like administrators or brokers, that they would, like in the meso level or the micro level, in precluded the implementation, or the like the taking the implementation of some decisions, and the actually prevented any sort of communication that would lead to coherent policy making and its implementations. So in Dubai here, they managed to diversify. They managed to create kind of enclaves, like industrial cities or construction sectors, and different sort of financial zones that like get around this kind of fragmented federal structure and it's like the main local administrative structures as well. Uh, so the central point here, it's not like, so rentier state that it kind of applies, to the Gulf states, but we do need to put things in a context, and we do need to investigate, the interaction between oil and different other variables or factors that would lead to specific or particular outcomes. Okay, so the question here, what we talked about, like the Gulf states and the republics that actually implemented import substitution industrialization, and the in the post-independence period that gave rise to populist authoritarianism that applied, this import substitution industrialization. But still, the whole region actually notoriously known for its poor records of social and economic development. And here you have like some numbers that would clarify or illustrate, how the region actually hasn't achieved a lot, when it comes to social and economic development. So you have here the growth, like the growth rate in GDP per capita, according to World Bank indicators. It was like 13% in 1990, and then dropped to 4.9, and then 2.3 in 2016, 2018. And the poverty rate as well, like the percentage of the population that living below the income poverty line, they reached like 25%. It actually like it's below the level in Latin America, and like fairly better than sub-Saharan Africa. And then the expenditure, the welfare expenditure, or the social policy, the educational and the educational and health policy, as a ratio to the military expenditure or the defense spending, it was like 1.7 in 2018. I think there is something wrong with this percentage. So I'll yeah. But anyway, it's kind of as I mentioned, like it's greater than the Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa, but this is because, if you remember from last lecture, because the existence of Israel and Saudi Arabia and Turkey. So we need like to kind of deconstruct, this indicator, but like the public spending on education and health, is still like, the region, the MENA region, actually has poor record, when it comes to the social spending on health and education. And even like, the increasing level of, as I mentioned, like, the like public spending on education, it doesn't mean automatically that this would affect the quality of education, because some of the budget actually, or the resources go for the building or the establishment of the some buildings and schools. So you have like bringing different threads together in order to account for this poor record of economic and social and economic development in the region. So it's basically the as I mentioned, like one stream in the literature focuses on resource curse and rentier state, and as I mentioned, we covered basically Herb and Herdog stuff, and the brought in different other variables in order to answer how oil affects, the incoherent, economic policies in Saudi, or distorted labor market in Kuwait and in Emirates. So we need, to focus on, different different variables that actually would capture the complexity of the relationship. And then, so you have like Kemet actually mentioned some other variables. Um, so one other trend focus on the legacy of the Ottoman Empire. Okay, if you remember, we talked about how like the legacy of the empire, the Ottoman Empire after the dissolution of the empire, how this affected the elite composition and the administrative and the bureaucratic structures of the state after independence. Um, so um, so you have here one comment regarding like two sub points here. It's like the state itself, like the despotic, the despotic state structure, or the legal and Islamic institutions. So for the legal and Islamic institutions, so there's like study by Quran that focused mainly on how the legal and Islamic institutions unintendedly actually affected because of this self-enforcing inflexibility would account for the poor economic or underdevelopment in the region. Um, so the main argument here is Islamic inheritance law. Uh, it actually obliges kind of division of estates among a long list of family members. So that's why this would prevent any sort of capital accumulation and emergence of this complex corporate system or any kind of innovative corporate structure. And the Waqf system as well that focuses mainly on providing social services. The Waqf actually it logs some vast resources into this kind of inefficient and unproductive areas. So instead of investing the money and putting the money into productive sectors, according to this Islamic institution, they keep it for providing some social services. And he made like another point regarding the legal the Islamic courts or the and how actually the Islamic courts during throughout from the 10th through the 16th century it denied any kind of legal personhood to the it didn't give this legal personhood to the enterprise to the business enterprises and the Muslim partnership. And because they counted mainly on this kind of oral agreements and testimonies, like witness testimony, in order to enforce agreements or contracts. So they don't have this commercial courts that allowed Europe during the same period in order to establish or to large partnership and to establish financial cooperation because of the help of this like court system that would settle any sort of disputes. um, and then like the state structure as well. And it like it had like the different repercussions, or it left like the legacy actually, or it was not like the same in some countries. They witnessed kind of discontinuities with this like despotic state structure, especially like Libya, for example, because the Italian authority actually dismantled all the administrations or the organizational structures created by the Ottomans, and clearing the country. And this actually affected the emergence of what's called like stateless society, even under Idris, and it continued in a different form under Qaddafi. um, but it was like in Iraq and Levant as well. It was like it affected the heritage of the existence of merchants and Sunni Muslims. They affected, the class composition during the colonial period, and then the fierce struggle for power in these two countries reshaped, the elite circles, later in the 70s. So it had like varied records, but the in like as a pattern, these countries actually re-established, the same like authoritarian um, administrative structure. And like another stream, they focus on like the colonial patterns of investment and institutions, or like administration. So here, like in Japan, in East Asia, actually the colonial power there, they made, kind of investment in local economies, and they built, some bureaucratic structures that inherited, and they built on East Asian countries. Actually, they built on after the end of the colonial period. But in the case of the MENA region, actually they didn't care about, creating, these modern administrative structures, with some exception in North Africa, because of, especially in Algeria, for example, because of the very existence of the French settlers. So they needed to have like kind of a foundation for their industrial sector, and the colonial authority actually developed bureaucratic, apparatuses to facilitate the tax collection and to protect, property, to offer some sort of protection to the property rights, especially for the settlers. Um, but actually, the exodus, or the when they left, after independence, so the state actually took over, these assets, and they took control over the economic matters, and they lacked, the capabilities and the administrative skills in order to run the state apparatus. So in Morocco, for example, they had like, the merchant class of Fassi, like, merchants, but they lacked, as well, any kind of administrative skills, and it took some time, in order to, but under that was like under the supervision and the control of the king, that actually allow kind of admission to the administrative structure. So still, like, the highly centralized uh, administrative structure that, like, the post-colonial or the post-independence leader took control over. In the Gulf, it was different, because, like, except for Saudi, even like, the other Gulf countries that they had like treaty, they got like entangled in a treaty system with Britain. So they didn't have like, it was like until the discovery of the oil, they started, even after gaining, this independence, they started to modernize their states, because they lack, any they used to lack, investment in infrastructure and productive, or even like, agricultural basis, that was like needed for productive economies. Um so this stream actually focuses on these pattern of administration and investment, and how like this left another sort of like, or carried over into, the post-independence or the post-colonial period, that like populist leaders, they didn't have like the infrastructure or needed in order to recover the economy, even with the implementation of the import substitution industrialization. And then the one other, like, stream focuses on import substitution industrialization, and this legacy of the post-colonial period. Um, so again, it was like, post-colonial leaders, they adopted, this populist discourse, especially like, led by Nasser, when they talk when the free officers regime actually undertook this land reform measures and nationalization, that actually motivated, other countries to implement the same policies, and to embrace, this modernization, or the authoritative, or authoritarian modernization, to undertake reforms from above. So they had like some sort of ambitious plan and heavy interventionist role of the state in order to mobilize resources and to put investment into industrial sectors. So the like any sort of like economic reform or development strategies or models, they entail some sort of coalition. So here, the actually the leaders here, they had some sort of social coalition or social contract in order with the popular classes, mainly peasants and labor, in order to support their their economic policies. Uh, so it was like, but it was different from what's called in the literature developmental state, uh, as it's the case in East Asia, that managed actually to post the economic growth and to achieve rapid economic growth and export led economic growth. So here it's because of like this kind of like intra-elite conflicts, and they had to establish social bases or social coalitions in order to stabilize their governance or the rule. So actually so again, like it's kind of historical institutionalist argument that the timing of this popular um, incorporation with the state building, that actually coincided with the state building, the post-colonial state building. It undermined the institutional capacity of the state that's needed actually to undertake certain development or to follow certain development strategy. So in East Asia, like it had like the state had like powerful uh, fiscal and administrative capacity, and it didn't need, like the state there didn't need to co-opt or to incorporate like popular classes, because they didn't witness this fierce struggle for power or polarization between different political elites. So this actually enhanced the capacity of the developmental state there, and it offered the state like greater autonomy in order to formulate policies based on mainly like economic orientation or for economic goals that is like conducive for rapid growth and industrialization or economic transformation. Um, so the state there as well, like they had like some resources to invest in education and vocational training, and this it created kind of recruitable like well-trained or well-educated pool for the bureaucracy and the creation of entrepreneurial elites and educated and skilled workforce as well. So the situation was totally different because of the legacy of colonial power and the lack or the budget constraints during that period. Um, so the state in East Asia, they had like their kind of like well established or capable financial regulations and administrative system or agencies that actually offered guidance to domestic capitalists or um, like their entrepreneurial elites in order to invest in specific targeted sectors. For the state actually perceived that these sectors were necessary for expansion, for like industrial transformation, and to increase the competitiveness of the state in the international system. So the like in Egypt, for example, the state lagged, even like it didn't witness this kind of, the state evolved over a long period of time, and it inherited this kind of administrative and bureaucratic structure, but the state actually didn't have the capacity in order to even like with the establishment of the new like ministers, in order to for planning or for industry, there is kind of like fragmented jurisdiction between these organizations that actually affected negatively the planning stage and the implementation stage as well. Um, so Turkey was kind of a different because it managed to drift away or to change the course of import substitution industrialization, and in the when they enacted, this like economic reform measures, they shifted, the entire economy towards economic-led growth. So it was like, the in the Turkey managed, somehow to break away from this. Um, some would say, like, because of the they didn't have, although like they inherited the same, like, financial burden, because of they resorted to, like, for, international creditors. The Ottomans actually resorted to the financial creditors, but the state actually didn't witness any didn't have any colonial legacy, and the competition between, different political parties as well helped with the um, economic decision making and policy choices. Um, and then, like, the state, because of this budget constraints and the exhaustion of the import substitution industrialization, um, the state and the region had to make, this shift to market reform measures or neoliberal reform package. Um, so they had to, like, to liberalize the economy, and they had to roll back, some of the public expenditure, especially on employment, public employment and subsidies, and the provision of public service. Uh, so again, like, this shift or this kind of shift in economic policies, it needed a shift in the social coalition as well, away from the popular classes this time, in order to reach out or to co-opt the business class, or the capitalist, the business elites, or the capitalist class. Um, so here it's by shifting, the social and economic coalition. So the state had to, like, for the sake of, like, neoliberal reforms or the neoliberal change, so they shifted, the social and economic coalition, and this created, what's called crony capitalism, by creating, this dualistic, structure between like connected and unconnected firms or business elites, and this affected both, like, the it had, like, political repercussions, and it had, like, economic repercussions as well. So it had, like, it led to the perpetuation of the authoritarianism in the region, and it actually it didn't help with transforming or um, improving, some indicators like economic growth or um, industrial transformation, or the level of education, and the quality of education, and the training, and the, like, competitive labor market as well. So here it's the this shift actually, on the one hand, it led to kind of distortion, as we mentioned when we talked about Hardock's varieties of capitalism. It created, this dualistic structure, and distorted with the negative equilibria, different, negative equilibria, that actually led to like the generation and the reproduction of the same distorted development strategy, by creating, this division between insiders and outsiders, and they actually, they are not, like, inactive players, but they actually active, and they resist, any kind of a change. So they have, like, interest in, again, reproducing the same like economic policies, and they don't have any incentive, because they already have like large market share, and they have like they can bend any kind of regulations, and they have like preferential treatment, so they don't have any incentive to invest in training and in innovation, and to improve, the international like the competitiveness position in the international market. And it had like, what's called like political complementarities as well, and it had like political repercussions. Like they had like, the interest, the state and the business elites, they had an interest in excluding, not only like protecting themselves, but actually excluding or raising barriers for like, for outsiders or unconnected firms. And even if, they had like, any sort of um, like potential for economic growth, and they forced them to shrink. But like with the labor market as well, because like as an insider, they have like, they are kind of politically relevant, so that's why they have an interest to maintain, their privileges in protection and welfare coverage, but they don't have, they have an interest in excluding, others. And actually by like the getting like, the bringing them like the capitalist or the business elites into like, playing, or getting them to play like political role, or to have like political positions, so they actually function in interest. They don't develop any autonomous position, so they don't present any source of the like, any kind of risk or threat to the existing regime, because they have an interest in stabilizing or maintaining, the same ruling circle or the same ruling elite. And actually they use their money in order to finance like, the stability of the regime through like elections, or buying off, the oppositions, or potential or like to co-opt, potential social challengers. But like, in the end, one of the justification, or one of the main reasons, of the uprisings, because of this like, growing, winner take all tendencies that undermined, the social contract between the post-independent state had with its citizens. So actually this led to like, a increasing level of inequality and exclusion. And then because of this like, severe, situation, social and economic situation, so like the masses took to this, like the citizens took to the streets, in firstly in Tunisia and then in Egypt, in order to express or to vocalize, their discontent, especially with regard to the social and economic disparities and inequalities in their societies. Um, so that's all for like, the topic, and we are gonna start this week with the uprisings. We're gonna have one more lecture in order to finish, the uprising, and then you will have like your two makeup lectures. Okay, so see you on Monday and Thursday. Bye.